Hey, good morning there, Ragamuffins. I wanted to do a little teaching on fasting today. So I'm going to read a little scripture here, Matthew 6. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with the sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces that they may appear to men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. So, so in this, Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he didn't say if you fast; he said when you fast. So I took that as being something that we need to do spiritually along our journey. So intermittent fasting has been kind of a buzzword here lately in the health world. A lot of people are doing that, where they're just they'll eat for 8 hours and then fast for 16. And it appears to have some great health benefits. And just like any other diet or any other health craze, there's always critics and cynics and etc. So one of my first experiences with fasting was as I did a 21-day beach body cleanse, and basically what this beach body cleanse did was is it turned me into a vegan for about 2.5 weeks. One thing that I noticed during that fast was is the first, because it was a fast from meat, it was a fast from sugar, it was just straight up vegetables and plant material. So after about 2 weeks, I just had this incredible euphoric rush. And I mean, I was bouncing off of clouds. It felt like it was incredible. But the first 3 days were pretty miserable. There was after about a day, start to get a little funny headache. Second day, get a little grouchy and get a little snippy with people around you. And then third day is just like, oh, what am I doing to myself? This is terrible. And then fourth day, things start to recover and on. And after about 2 weeks, it was like, wow, this is awesome. And and I think that's what they refer to as ketosis in the science and medical field. So basically, your body just it runs out of sugar, and so it starts to burn fat. And fat is a much slower burning fuel for your body, whereas sugar is just like it's it burns a lot faster, but it's not near as efficient, and you don't get near as much energy off of it. So, and on top of that, in the early 1900s, one of the ways that they started to treat epileptic people was with fasting, with a ketosis diet. So, with all that in mind, think about sugar as a numbing agent for your mind, a kind of a Novocaine for your brain. And that explains some of the moodiness. So I read a book by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley wrote A Brave New World. Some of y'all may have had to read that in high school, or you may have heard of it in that facet. He wrote a book called The Doors of Perception. And Aldous Huxley decided that he was going to do an experiment on himself, and he took some psychedelic mushrooms. Well, he explained and described his experience. And in that book, he also talked about fasting and what that does to create not the same experience, but a similar experience as what psychedelic mushrooms did. Now, I'm not suggesting that if you don't eat and don't take any sugar in, that you're going to go on a psychedelic trip and astral project yourself out into the middle of nowhere. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that Aldous described this. He was a scientific kind of guy. He described this as being something along that same lines, where when we have a lot of trauma in our lives and we have all these experiences that have accumulated to create the way we sense the world, when you take sugar out of your diet, it takes that Novocaine away from those experiences and the way you sense the world. Hence the reason why people that have suffered from a lot of trauma can be obese from eating a lot of food, just stuffing their feelings, just numbing out by eating a dozen cookies or a pint of ice cream. And also people that have had a lot of that traumatic experiences in their life will drink alcohol to numb out. So if you put that all in perspective, when we cut sugar out of our diet, we start to feel those things that have hurt us over the years. Well, nowadays, especially in some of these Iraqi war veterans that have come back over the last 20 years and from Afghanistan, there's a lot of traction in the area of people taking psychedelic drugs in small portions under medical supervision with a counselor present, and they work through these issues. So if you think about these psychedelic drugs as being something that blocks your uptake of sugar to your brain, that's why people have spiritual experiences that can be very negative. You've heard of people taking a bad trip on acid or whatever. And I am not suggesting psychedelic drugs at all. It's a bad gateway. I just want to explain this out, and then at the end, we'll talk a little more about it. So the idea is that when you take those, it blocks that sugar uptake and it allows you to work through what happened and make your body sense the atmosphere differently as a more safe atmosphere. Because ultimately that's what trauma is, right? It's a part of our life where we just feel unsafe. And that changes the way we sense the world around us. So that fasting creates an environment where all of the blood flow that normally goes to our gut to digest food is allocated somewhere else, because in the case of a Beachbody diet, vegetables are very easy for your body to process in comparison to meat and to sugar and all of those things that are just more difficult to process. So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is that Jesus said, when you fast, not if you fast. And I have found it to be very cleansing to take a 2 or 3 day fast once a month, sometimes every couple of weeks. And I usually try to get away at least for the first 24 to 48 hours, because that's when the grouchiness is and you kind of and you're difficult with the people around you. And it's a good time to be alone with the Lord and just consume spiritual things. So it kind of creates a hunger, would be a better way. A spiritual hunger would be a good way to describe it. So I'll fast for a couple, 2 or 3 days. I've gone on longer fasts. Probably the longest one. I went on one for 35, 36 days last year. And I was just drinking fruit juice and some chicken broth to keep my blood pressure up, and eating popcorn as kind of a filler. The main thing I feel like is the lack of the uptake of sugar. I think that is the most important thing based on that Aldous Huxley book. I think God put that book in front of me to help me understand it. So take that as you will. But a 2 or 3 day fast once a month feels like a really healthy thing. If you've got some things that you want to play with, a little science experiment, you want to go a little bit longer, be sure to read up on it and educate yourself a little bit. I've kind of laid some principles out for you there. And if you're actively being counseled, if you're in the counseling process, maybe fasting, and then a couple days in going to speak to your counselor, some of these harder feelings might come up and you might be able to process them and push those out. So that's kind of it in a nutshell on fasting. I would suggest if this sparks some curiosity, do a little bit of Googling on it and see what you can see. One thing that you can look into that I found pretty cool is 100 years ago, they had they started treating people that were epileptic with fasting. Well, in the book of Mark, there's a young man that appears to be having seizures and throwing himself into the fire per se. And Jesus told his disciples in Mark 9:29, after he exorcised this demon from this boy, he says, his disciples said, "What happened? How'd you do that?" And Jesus said, so he said to them, "This kind can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting." So it's kind of interesting that some of those epileptic health issues can be resolved from taking part in a keto diet, which is more specifically what that is. So just food for thought today. I like the topic of fasting. I've had some health benefits from it that I will talk about in part 2 of fasting. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And we'll pray us out here. Hey, Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for the Bible. Thank you for fasting. Thank you for all the wonderful things that you provide us each day. And thank you for these family and friends that are listening to this today. I'm very grateful for them, and I hope they're getting some value from this. So in Jesus' mighty name I pray. Love you guys. Have a glorious day.